explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
The following stream has been approved for truth seekers by the DefCon Truth Alliance.
If the opinion that's coming out needs people to be silenced, it's a psyop. There are psychological operations in play.
So if you can't question it, if you're supposed to just go along, it's a psyop.
Yeah, and if people have to be silenced or publicly shamed because of their information, and they're not telling people the sky's falling, they're not saying crazy shit. Mm-hmm. They're just saying basic stuff, and they need to be silenced. That is a psyop.
There's a war out there, old friend. A world war. And it's not about who's got the most bullets. It's about who controls the information. What we see and hear, how we work, what we think. It's all about the information.
We have an Insurrection Act for a reason.
Bad guy can't win. It's a morality tale.
This is warfare. This is warfare.
The eyes see and the ears hear, the mind believes.
This is warfare.
There we go.
Here we are.
What's up, brother? Let me pull that out of the studio so I don't get it confused with the other video we got lined up that we're going to be going into. How are you doing, bro?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. It's Christmas time, man. Christmas time. I still don't even get my tree up.
Oh, man. Come on. It's already going to be the 10th.
It's tomorrow. It's tomorrow. We're doing it tomorrow.
You can get away with it when your kids get a little bit older.
Yeah, they're teenagers. So.
But when they're tiny, it's just like you're done eating the turkey, Dad, get the tree going. Like
Give
now.
me it's the day after Halloween. It's like we putting the tree up.
Jesus. Hey, you know what? I love Thanksgiving. Welcome, you guys. DefCon 0, episode 21. 21 being my favorite number, so I definitely look forward to tonight's show. Do us a solid. If you're a first-time viewer, go and check out Badlands. That's the family that we're with. Plenty of content 7 days a week throughout the entire day. All kinds of stuff. I mean, it'd be hard to cover it all, but you definitely won't be let down. So definitely go check out Badlands Media here on Rumble. And if you are a longtime listener, longtime viewer, do us a solid. Let us know where you're from. Build some friendships in the live chat. Hit the heart. Smash the thumb. Leave comments. You guys have been doing phenomenal. You guys have put this show in the leaderboard top 10 every single show since its inception. That is a testament to you guys, the support community that we have. Tonight's show is going to be interesting. A lot of things.
A lot of things coming out. and I want people to understand that this might not be the scenarios that you had envisioned when you thought deep state and foreign involvement and all this stuff. But this is what it is. You're getting it from legitimate sources who are coming out there, who are telling you this is how it was organized. This is what was happening. Now, should we trust them just blindly? No, I don't trust anybody. But I would say that from this information, you begin to wrap your head around what has actually been happening, what the whole purpose of taking back the domain of information, what the whole purpose of getting Donald Trump elected, of why we have him in the position of power. We're going to talk a lot tonight about some things that General Michael Flynn said, Patrick Byrne said recently, Lara Logan's different interviews. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court case that's being heard right now, because this is huge. I haven't even talked to Alpha about this. He didn't even know I was going to bring that up. But the fourth branch of government case is being heard right now by the Supreme Court. And I want people to understand that if the Supreme Court sides with Donald Trump on this case, oral arguments have been heard the last 2 days. That is the decimation of the deep state. It's gone. That's it. I mean, that's where it begins, is right there when Trump gets that authority. You're talking about the firing of Fed chair, Fed governors, of independent agencies under the executive that Trump had no power or control of, will be back under his control.
There's a definitive line of where his power lies with that. Shout out G. Henry gifting a subscription in the chat. It's going to be a great conversation. That's a great teaser. So with that, let's pay some bills. We got 2 ads that we're going to run with you guys real quick. And then after that, you guys, here's what I will say. If you're a longtime viewer, some of the information that we're going to talk about today, me and Josh told you guys about months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Months ago. Now, how the hell did Alpha and Josh get ahead of everybody? Well, stick around for the entire show and you'll see what's coming up in the next couple weeks when mainstream media and everybody else catches up. It's going to be fun, folks. So with that, here's sponsor number 1.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest Made in America sale ever. We just put huge discounts on products made right here in the USA. MyPillow bed pillows, body pillows, go anywhere pillows, bolster pillows, all made with my patented adjustable fill. Mattresses, mattress toppers, mattress pads, adjustable bed frames, mattress foundations, and so much more. All made right here in the USA. And now we're expanding our USA products beyond just quality sleep. Like the cross I wear every day, now available in both men's and women's. We even have USA-made socks. And are you tired of being tired? Try our new health beverage, Rev 7. Or how about my coffee, the greatest coffee ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to get deep discounts on all these products. Plus, for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
The Scales Freedom Collection is where patriotism meets comfort, inspired by salt air, tight lines, and the stars and stripes. This collection celebrates the American spirit through the lens of those who love outdoor adventures. From long-sleeve performance shirts built for the elements to butter-soft tees and hats. With bold, ocean-inspired Americana prints, every piece is designed to keep you cool, protected, and proud to be American. Built for the elements, designed for freedom. Shop now at badlandsmedia.tv/scales and enter code Badlands at checkout for 20% off your next purchase. Badlandsmedia.tv/scales. We got some great sponsors, man. Some quality stuff. If you guys haven't had those shirts yet, I mean, they're quality. You know, I was like, send me some more free stuff because I like it. Dude, Rumble has us on the big screen right now. Shout out Rumble.
Awesome. 10,000 people watching. Appreciate you. Thank you, Rumble. The number one show on Tuesday nights, whether Rumble plays us on the big screen or not, it is the number one show on Rumble. So, where should we start? Where do you want to start, Alpha? Because there's a lot to go through.
There's a lot to go through. I know the interview between Alex Jones and General Flynn, and we want to kind of go through that and debrief it. But I would say let's go with the statements Patrick Byrne made first.
Sure.
Let's go with that, and then we'll let that lead us into, because the video with Alex Jones is going to eat up a lot of time. So I want to kind of set the stage with, Patrick dropped the gem today, and there's a lot of different ways to interpret it.
Well, I got a quick clip if you want me to pull it up.
Yeah, go fire off. Absolutely.
Yeah. I got a quick clip, and so for anybody out there, quite a few of us have been calling for the resignation of certain people. Susie Wiles is one of them. There's 1,000 different reasons why. If you want to understand why various different people are coming into the DOJ, why people are coming into the executive that are like Bush holdovers or rhinos, it's because of Susie Wiles. She needs to get the fuck out of the way. And I think that we actually have that potential for that. Alpha and I hit on that on Sunday on Q After Hours a few weeks ago. The next day, the rumor started circulating by Paul Sperry that Susie Wiles was going to be leaving at the beginning of next year. The White House didn't refute it. Trump didn't refute it. The next day, a rumor started that Kash Patel is going to get fired. The White House refuted it, came out there.
I want to pause right because I want to set everybody up for that conversation if they missed it. There was a show that I did here on Badlands called People, where I interviewed Defender of the Republic.
Yep.
And she dropped an exclusive with us on that Susie Wiles thing. And for those that didn't catch it, there were a lot of people that Trump was pissed off with, where he was like, why aren't you voting on my bill? I thought everybody was on board, and a bunch of them said, hey, you didn't get our memo? Like, we didn't. And this is what kind of opened Pandora's box, who prevented Trump from getting this information. And all of a sudden we see that the trickle down from that is Susie Wiles. And so Kaidi, Defender of the Republic, dropped that gem, which led into that conversation we ended up having on Q After Hours, which then led into everything that Josh had talked about. And I'll give it right back to you.
Yeah. And so they didn't refute. They definitely refuted Kash Patel, but they didn't refute the Susie Wiles rumor. So good indication that Susie Wiles is most likely going to be going out the door. And you'd probably see someone like Stephen Miller come in as the new chief of staff. And then you'd probably see potentially this guy that we're going to talk about here in a little while, General Michael Flynn, coming back into the White House. And I think that the gatekeeper holding him away right now is Susie Wiles. Now, a few of the other people that we talked about, Pam Bondi, and I think that we all understand this, whether it's the Tina Peters case in Colorado, whether it's the 4 different grand juries that have been impaneled, whether it was the sabotage of what happened with Lindsay Halligan in the Comey case. I got my own thoughts on that. But we can discuss this here in a second, the Lindsay Halligan stuff. I actually have my thoughts on this, and I think that this was done intentionally. But then you got John Ratcliffe at the CIA. And another one that is coming up now is Rick Grinnell. And this is going to be in this clip that you're about to watch with Patrick Byrne, who came out today and declared that he was a CIA operative. Okay? And this was not news to us. Go ahead.
I'm just going to put a disclaimer out there. Statements made by people that we show on video clips are not necessarily the opinions and ideologies shared by those over there at Badlands, but you're going to hear some different perspectives tonight. So I just wanted to put that out there.
That's right.
Because, listen, Josh, me and you both know there's going to be chaos in the live chat tonight.
Right. Well, if you go back to an interview that you and I did with it was Patrick Byrne, the first one. It wasn't after the election. It was actually the first interview that you and I did with Patrick Byrne. Patrick Byrne was telling his life story. He was telling how he was recruited as a confidential informant by the FBI, and he worked for the FBI's counterintelligence division through a handler. And he mentioned that other intelligence agencies oversaw him. And he said that it goes directly up to Barack Obama, but there was other intelligence agencies, and he had a handler at the top of one of other intelligence agencies. Well, he comes out today and says that this was John Brennan, and that he was basically an operative that was helping with the Russia hoax, and everything that he's coming out with now is basically his repentance that, hey, look, this is crazy. This is the end of America. I didn't realize what was going on at that time. I think it's pertinent for me to come out with this information now because I got connections in the CIA. This is what we're hearing. And I want you to listen to what he says. Now, does this mean that, CIA equals bad? One of the things that happens in the United States of America is we have broad generalizations. We say like the Jews run the world or the CIA is rogue. That's a very broad generalization, right? It's not all the Jewish people in the world rule the world. That is just not true. There's a lot of good Jewish people, amazing Jewish people. There's a lot of people.
There goes trigger number one.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in the world who have Jewish last names that rule the world that aren't Jewish, that aren't, they don't follow Judaism. So I want people to understand that part. So when we say CIA, not all the CIA is bad. And I want people to understand that. And this is something that I put out there multiple different times on my own platform, that the whole CIA isn't rogue. There's various factions within aspects of the CIA that are rogue. And primarily what I call the deep state intelligence apparatus, it operates through NGOs, institutions, think tanks. It operates through the dark money channels. It doesn't operate primarily through CIA proper. So I just want to clarify that, but then listen to what Patrick Byrne says here.
But Rick Grinnell, I'm told from 2 independent sources, shagged a 14, 15-year-old boy, and the Russians have the videos. So he's owned. John Ratcliffe, I'm also told, on good authority, very good authority within the intelligence community, John Ratcliffe, who I've met twice and seemed like a nice enough man. I don't hate the guy, but he's got a similar problem. It's not underage, it's not a boy, but on 2 occasions he was drawn into hotel rooms with young women, and it's on video. He's owned. John Ratcliffe's not really running the CIA. John Brennan is. The top 2 layers of the CIA are John Brennan's guy. This would explain some odd facts about John Ratcliffe, and this really sticks in my craw. John Ratcliffe was the DNI in the last days of Trump. He, by law, had to deliver on December 18th. That was the day he had to deliver his report on whether or not there was foreign involvement in the election. He didn't deliver. He waited until January 7th, the day after January 6th, when there's all that hubbubaloo. And then he delivers a report, and his report was the official report to the intelligence community that they didn't think there was foreign involvement or that China was involved, but he put a cover letter on that said, I officially dispute, I think China was involved. And he slipped this in on January 7th, where it barely made a blip because everything that was going on by January 7th, 2020. Why did he do that? He's owned. To see John Ratcliffe in January, I went to see him first in July of 2018, 17 months into Trump's term. I went over and turned over to John Ratcliffe because he was on the Nunes committee, and I met him a second time in late October and fed him everything he needed to know. He sat, he dawdled, he spun, he said, well, we can't. He shocked me by saying, well, we went to the CIA, but we can only confirm 25% of what you're telling me. I said, you're kidding me. I came to you as a whistleblower. You went over to the CIA, asked about me, or you're out of your mind? Well, that guy, you know why he's acting that way? Because he got twice lured into DC hotel rooms, 2 different girls, not at the same time, shagged them, and it's on video. So he's a puppet of John Brennan. Rick Grinnell is a puppet of Russia, Brennan, somebody. That's why the CIA is fighting teeth, toes, and fingernails to fight turning Venezuela over to the woman who just won the Nobel Prize, who has 80 to 90% support. They don't want to turn it over. They want to turn it over to Delcy Rodriguez. That's why, because they're barely Americans. They're being blackmailed. John Ratcliffe and Rick Grinnell are being blackmailed. And, so let's get that on. Let's get that on. And sorry, fellas, last thing I want to do was come out and do this. But CIA is making me mad. So I'm letting you know, a part of the reason I know this is I am CIA. I was CIA. John Ratcliffe is being blackmailed for 2 liaisons in DC hotel rooms, and Rick Grinnell shagged a 14, 15-year-old Serbian boy, and the Russians have the film.
Okay, it goes in the repeat, but he goes in there and talks about how he's a CIA asset, and he's got the receipts to prove it. Now, Alpha and I kind of already knew this. We had talked to Patrick in private. Not something that I think he wanted known. But with that being known and understanding, it makes sense to me why Lara Logan's interview with Gary and Ralph didn't mention the CIA at all. And we questioned this. We said, hey, we know the CIA is involved in this. We know the CIA through Cuban. The CIA runs Cuban intelligence. Okay. So you go back to the history of the CIA in Cuba. The CIA put Fidel Castro into power. The CIA has ran as a rogue entity the Cuban intelligence agencies. They control Spain. They control Venezuela, right? That is legitimate, but they never made that connection within those interviews. And I find that that's very kind of bullshit. But I think what you have here is a rebranding that is coming through the Trump administration of the CIA is that, hey, we have to stop looking at the CIA as rogue and evil and bad. I don't know why. I guess it's above my pay grade. But as General Michael Flynn is saying, we need to dismantle the CIA. You need to completely eradicate it. You need to fire John Ratcliffe immediately. You need to fire the two people below John Ratcliffe that are Brennan holdovers, Brennan proteges, and we need to shatter it into 1,000 pieces. And I agree with that statement. What we need to do is we need to centralize U.S. intelligence down from its 18 agencies into just one or two, with the CIA going away, because it's just had way too much power. But one of the things that we look at here is the information that's coming out. And I want people to understand how I view information. So Patrick Byrne just said a whole bunch of stuff. Do I believe it? No, it's just information. You watch the Lara Logan interview. You watch the Colonel Chandelier video with Lara Logan's second interview. Do I believe it? No, it's information. You put information together and you start to see what matches, what adds up. You start to construct what the possible narratives might be. There's my truth, there's your truth, and then there's the actual truth. And so you have to get to it indirectly by looking at all bases of information. And so a lot of the things that are coming out right now, though, this is in the hands of President Donald Trump, of what happened in the 2020 election. If you don't know the story of what Gary Bernstein talked about on Lara Logan's podcast, he basically said that Venezuela, through Smartmatic and surrogates, Dominion, etc., through radical left organizations, MI6 involved, CIA involved. He didn't mention those, but I'm telling you they are involved because Lord Mark Malloch Brown's name, Open Society Foundation, China was involved, Iran was involved, stole the 2020 election, and they skimmed off of conservative counties the votes that they needed for Joe Biden to make the difference. Obviously, there's a mail-in ballot scam that all happened there as well. That wasn't discussed because that was a ground operation being ran by the radical left. This is the Mark Zuckerbergs. This is the Reid Hoffmans, those organizations, and then an extension of the Soros organizations. But Donald Trump came out today, and he said, I want to find the clip that, where is it? He talks about, it's actually going to be right here. There it is. 25 seconds. You guys can bear with me while I pull this up. I want you to listen to what he says because I'm going to clarify a little bit of what he says here.
I could show you a chart. It's a lot of land I lost.
It's a lot of land. I think
You got to think of it. If our election wasn't rigged, it was a rigged election. Now everyone knows it. It's going to come out over the next couple of months too loud and clear because we have all the information here. But if the election wasn't rigged and stolen, you wouldn't even be talking about Ukraine right now.
the resounding consensus in Europe right now.
Now, I want to point out go ahead, Alpha. Go ahead.
Well, we're probably going to talk about the same thing. There's a specific verbiage he used that's not civilian lingo. Are you going in that route? If not, I'll wait.
Hold on to yours. Okay. This is political, right? This is Dasha with political on her show. This is the mainstream media. What did you notice the mainstream media just did that they'd never done before?
Agreed with him.
They agreed with him. They did not push back. They did not say, Mr. President, that is not true. Courts have already held their hearings on this. We know that the 2020 election was legitimate and you lost. That's what every mainstream media personality has ever done when Donald Trump was asked that question, except this time. And you see how cool, calm, and collected he was. In the next few months, it's all going to come out. We have the information. And that's where this is important because We know who gave them the information. We know what the information was. We know who's viewed it. We know what happened in 2024 when they were going to steal the 2024 election. Now, if you don't know this story, but go ahead with your part, because I want you to get that part in there before we go too far.
He said something and it caught my ear because I was like, that's not how civilians talk. So who are you talking to, sir? He goes, it's going to come out and it's going to be loud and clear.
That's right.
That's not
well,
what
military's the only way there.
That's military or law enforcement lingo. You can come out and say, you know, it's going to come out, you know, it's everyone's going to be headlines, you know, they're not going to be able to hide it. But when you come out and say it's going to be loud and clear, you know, that's radio chatter right there.
5-5, loud and clear. So this is what I want people to understand is that General Flynn, through organization, Patrick Byrne with a team of 30 people, they went out there over the last 4 years. Patrick Byrne spent $80 million, and you can believe it or not believe it. I don't think it matters whether he's a CIA op or not. But this is the information that's being presented. And I want you to understand that this information was first presented to Susie Wiles, who was an election denier. She didn't believe the 2020 election was stolen. This was three weeks before the 2024 election. 3 weeks before the 2024 election. Susie Wiles didn't believe the 2020 election was stolen. I think that that's just absurd that Trump even has her as his chief of staff for that main fact. But they get into the gatekeeper, Susie Wiles. They show her the evidence, and she says, I want to have someone look at this. That person that she brings in to look at the evidence that Patrick Byrne and Flynn were presenting was Elon Musk. Elon Musk takes all of the evidence and says, I don't want to hear anything. I'm going to put it in the Grok, and I'm going to see what Grok says. And he compiled all the information in the Grok, and within a few minutes later, Elon Musk comes out and says, it's legit. It's real. Patrick Byrne later on clarifies that through Elon and General Flynn, Cyber Command was contacted 3 days before the 2024 election.
And he was very specific with a certain phrase he said in that same conversation. And I think we could make a safe assumption that it was derived from a lot of commotion that was based off the interview that we had with Patrick Byrne, because he made sure to do a statement of clarification where he said, and General Flynn was not involved in anything that we did that was illegal or might have been conceived as illegal.
That's right. Because a lot of people were speculating that Patrick Byrne ran a private cyber attack on this company. But no, it wasn't. It was Cyber Command. So Elon, and from what I'm gathering, Elon Flynn got a hold of Cyber Command. They showed them the evidence 3 days before the 2024 election. Cyber Command ran an operation and melted the Belgrade, Serbia servers running for Smartmatic. And Donald Trump won legitimately the 2024 election. Now, that right there is just a wow. But I want people to also see this. Cyber Command has all records and authorizations of what they did. That is evidence. That is evidence that is going to be utilized in all of this. Trump has all of the information that Elon Musk compiled that Patrick Byrne and Flynn gave to Trump. We have 2 generals from Venezuela now on record willing to publicly testify the legitimacy of this information. And so this is the real deal. This is happening. Now, I know there's a grand jury impaneled, and I was going to talk about Lindsay Halligan here in a second, but we know that there's a grand jury impaneled in New York, Pennsylvania, Eastern District of Virginia, and the Southern District of Florida. And one thing that we've pointed out, and I don't know if people can see this yet, is that all of these grand juries are looking at different things. So you have FISA-Gate and Comey over and Brennan over in the Eastern District of Virginia. You have Quinones over in the Southern District of Florida. We don't know about Pennsylvania or New York yet. I believe New York potentially is the Clinton Foundation or George Soros. I think it's probably George Soros. I believe Pennsylvania is going to be the 2020 election, but we don't have the information fully on all of those. But what happened is Lindsay Halligan came out and issued an indictment on James Comey and Letitia James right before the statute of limitations was up for James Comey, 2 days before the statute of limitations. And they fought it and they won it because Lindsay Halligan wasn't legitimate in her position as the attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. Now, people are blaming Pam Bondi for this, not the radical judges. The radical judge that went in there was absolutely correct in saying that she did not have the right and authority to issue that indictment. The question is why did Pam Bondi, who knew this, Pam Bondi knew that this indictment wouldn't go through. So why did she do it? Maybe she was trying to buy time to extend it. Hopefully that, a statute of limitations, because there is one that could backdate it, something. I don't know. My thoughts on it go back to what we talked about in the original parts of this show. I believe James Comey sung like a bird. I believe that the 86, what is it? It was the 8647.
8647.
8647 Seashells post when he was brought into Washington, D.C. The Secret Service sat him down and talked with him. I think that was a cry for help. Like, hey, I'm willing to testify, but we have to keep this under wraps. I don't want to get killed. And I think that this set up, because it was right after that things began to leak, that they found all the quote unquote burn bags, a hidden broom closet on the 7th floor of the FBI. And then we have some Scavino posts that kind of validate this a little bit, with Dan Scavino posting Trump Sunshine with a James Comey retweeted post, and John Brennan, it's like dark, and it just didn't make sense. And those two posts, we go to the Q boards on September 11th, or right side by side, that associates them with 9/11. Don't need to go into all of that right now. But I believe that James Comey is a cooperating witness in all of this. And I think that the idea was that you can't give him an immunity deal. You can't go out there and just say, hey, we're going to give Comey immunity because he's going to testify, because then his life's in danger. What you have to do is you have to make it look like it was a failure on the Trump administration. And it's exactly what we saw. Lindsey Halligan gets put in place. The indictment for Comey comes in. They fight it. They win. The indictment goes away. Doesn't matter the crimes. He can still be, it's not with prejudice. So it's not, so he can be indicted again, but the statute of limitations are up. So he walks free out and clear on the perjury charges. I think that was done on purpose.
And they have a contingency that exists, and that's the continuing conspiracy doctrine. So if he thinks, well, hey, I'm gonna double agent them or triple agent, depending on where you're keeping tabs on this, is remember the one thing that we're seeing being identified here as well is a criminal enterprise with an ongoing set of crimes, which checks the boxes of everything you need for the continuing conspiracy doctrine. And as long as you have the continuing conspiracy doctrine going on, that statute of limitations, that clock hasn't started yet. So the good guys always have that part in their back pocket for leverage against these guys if they decide that they're going to go sideways, or they think that they're going to play the DOJ or play Trump's administration. So just keep that in the back of your mind too. Before we get too far away from it though, too, I want us to kind of throw out some speculations with regards to the Rick Grinnell, because I know a lot of people in the chat were like, holy smokes. And there's people that like him. There's people that don't. There's people now that are like, I always knew he was bad. And now there's people that are questioning it. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot of information coming from, not just, recognized voices in alt media, but there's some other voices that Rick Grinnell was in Venezuela about a week ago or so. At the same time, this information's coming out that when the GPS was shut down over Venezuela, that probably wasn't the U.S. Navy that did it, that it might have been Maduro that did it. Now, the way some of mainstream media and alt media is reporting that is, well, it makes sense. Maduro probably did it because he wants to affect the technology of the U.S. military. He knows he can't. They all know they can't. The satellites and the backup systems that we have, we can't. I don't think that it's far-fetched that Maduro is actually the one that shut down the GPS communications there, but not to affect the U.S. military, but to sabotage the Venezuelan cartel and military.
So one thing that we know for certain is that there are kinetic operations going on within cartel territory. We know this. And so it would actually make sense what you're talking about, because there was actually a whole blackout of Caracas and throughout Venezuela the other day as well as the GPS. And that we got it through good confirmation that tier 1 operators are active within Central America, Mexico, and Venezuela. And so it would make sense that we would see that. Now, if that came from Maduro, you got to remember, we go back, a week and a half. Maduro calls Trump And Trump's like, I don't think he's going to listen. But Maduro's like, oh, the call was great. You know, Maduro asked, according to insiders, Maduro asked for $200 million and free passage to Qatar. My thoughts are if he gets to Qatar, he's going to be extradited to the United States almost immediately. Trump is like, nope, just leave. Give up power. You're not going to get anything. No safe passage, because he doesn't want safe passage, because Maduro could be a cooperating witness in all of this. And Patrick Byrne lays this out with Delcy Rodriguez, who is one that Rich Grinnell and these people are trying to get into place in Venezuela, who she is literally the cartels. I mean, she's a bigger player in the cartels than Maduro actually is. And so we have to look into that a little bit. But going back to Maduro, I think that he's scared shitless. I think that he's making deals, but he doesn't want to get killed in the process, and that he can easily be killed in the process. And so I think that he is playing the game with Trump. I think that he is going out there, and most likely, we saw this a few weeks ago, that Venezuela shot down a cartel plane in Venezuela with their F-16s. I mean, why was he doing that if they're pro cartels? That's telling you that they're gaining the support back to take the fight back on their own will. Or we'll see. I don't know necessarily how this is going to play out. This is really about optics and how we look at it. But I think that the end is going to surprise a lot of people of how all of this works out.
Now, since we have this set up, before we go into General Flynn's, should we cover the Chinese ship, or should we save that for after the Flynn conversation?
Yeah, we're talking about Venezuela. So let's cover that right now. So, do you have the post?
I do not. I can grab it. If not, I can give everybody the short and skinny of it while you pull it up. Just to kind of remind everybody, a couple months ago, me and Josh had shared some information with you guys that there was Chinese ships that were en route to South America. And a lot of people said, you guys are wrong. That ain't happening. And part of the reason that we had, and our thoughts around this is this why we see such a large presence of the U.S. Navy in the Caribbean area and off the coast of Venezuela? It would make sense. And then we started getting a little bit more information. We won't go too far into this one because we're still trying to corroborate stuff of, what's in the water in that area. So we're working on that. I do find it interesting that Defender of the Republic also posted a series of maps a few days ago of the cables that run from South America to the Caribbean islands and to New Jersey and to, different parts of the East Coast of the United States, all of the same vicinity of this area. And that brings us to now we have a clip of a woman that's reporting, and that's what Josh is bringing up right now, of a ship that is, here it is. Go ahead and play it. She'll do a better job explaining than I will.
She's funny too.
Yeah,
somebody lying. No, somebody lying. Somebody lying. Somebody lying on mentiroso. Somebody lying. Today is December 8th, 2025. It's 10:30 a.m. Mountain Time. Why is there a Chinese ship in Jamaica? I'm not talking about no Chinese ship. I'm not talking about no random ship. I mean a big vessel ship. I mean a medicine ship. A medicine ship. China spent over a week getting to Jamaica. Not Japan. I'm sorry. Arigato. What you said? China spent over a week getting to Jamaica, and their claim was because we had to help patients after the storm and the earthquake that took place. Wait a damn minute. Woman gave me da bien hua. Shama, we called you first. For anybody and everybody that's missing it, China ain't never sent a vessel or a ship ever to Jamaica, but they're sitting outside and it's too big just to be a medical ship. Now, I know you're paying attention to everything else that's going on in the news right now, but I really need you to pay attention to the buildup between that 150 flotilla that's in the Pacific and them now having a Navy ship sitting outside of our back door. I don't think you understand. They just passed a $900 billion bill, defense bill. Do you know what time period we passed a bill that was that large? 2007, Iraq, Afghanistan, $120 billion were passed in a defense bill. We're going to war. And they won't tell you until we get hit.
Interesting words. I don't agree with her fully that the context of we're going to war, but the ship that we're talking about here, and I can bring this up, is equivalent to our USNS Mercy ships, the U.S. Navy vessels. Chinese medical ship docks in Port Royal, December 8th, 2025. And the question is this is weeks after this hurricane. Nobody asked them to come. They've never sent them ever before, but all of a sudden they're going to send them. Well, these medical ships that China has, or the U.S. has, these are absolutely used as intelligence collection devices. They have intelligence experts on board. I guarantee you. It's also a supply ship, so it carries massive amounts of supplies. My thoughts is this is the ears in the water that China sent to the Caribbean to find out what's really going on, what the United States is doing with its military, what its Navy, daily activities of its Navy are. You can easily launch balloons directly from these ships. You have ISR capabilities that come off of these ships. You have drones that they could launch from these ships, all different types of capabilities. And now they are in that AOR. So really important. And Elf and I, like you were saying, we called this weeks ago. And one of the things that we said is this is because if you look at the position of the U.S. Navy fleet in the Caribbean, number one is taking back the Panama Canal was actually very critical and crucial to the Trump administration, because the only way besides going around South America or around North America to get through Central and in North America, or Central and South America, is through the Panama Canal. And so once you take that, you only leave one way out for people to go. And that is through the Caribbean, through a very, very narrow channel between Brazil and various islands. The U.S. Navy is patrolling that whole area. Now, I've gotten it from my Navy sources, from my intelligence sources, that the Navy is conducting ASW, anti-submarine warfare operations, in the Caribbean with their destroyers and their cruisers, as well as with the drone fleet, which they've outfitted with ASW ISR capabilities. So they are looking for submarines. So everybody's ever heard, I know Monkey Works, a few other people have talked about it, that Venezuela has nukes, or there's Chinese nuke subs in the water. I do believe that is accurate. I do believe that is 100% accurate, that there are rogue submarines or Chinese submarines in the Caribbean. And one of the main reasons for the massive Chinese or the U.S. buildup in that region is to ensure that submarine can't leave. And number two, to find it and hunt it down. And then this backs up the national security strategy, which just came out last week.
And before we get into that portion of the strategy, and Trump made a statement a few weeks ago about submarines off Russia. And what was that, Josh?
Oh, geez. Yeah, that was interesting. He said, he was talking about Russia and Ukraine, and he goes, I just sent 2 nuclear submarines off the coast of Russia just as a message. And I don't think he was talking to Russia, because that was coming right off of the red carpet meeting with Vladimir Putin. I think that he was talking to the Caribbean. I think he was talking to that AOR in the South Pacific, that we have U.S. nuclear submarines out there, and they are hunting in those waters. Now, one of the problems comes about is with diesel submarines, Soviet-era diesel submarines. Now, when the Warsaw Pact collapsed and the Soviet Union collapsed, they sold off a massive amount of military technology, including a lot of their diesel submarines. Now, the countries that bought up their diesel submarines, you guessed it, South American countries. And so we've seen a lot of drug runners actually utilizing old Soviet-era diesel submarines for narco trafficking. When I was in the Navy, we did a comics we did a operation exercise off of Hawaii with, I believe it was the Polish Navy. Don't quote me on that, but they had a Soviet-era diesel submarine. And the whole objective of the of the exercise was to use our ASW capabilities to hunt down the submarine and destroy it. Out of 25 exercises, that submarine killed us, all of our ships, every single time. The reason being is because diesel submarines are incredibly silent. Typically what they'll do is, on a U.S. Navy ship, you have your sonar, which is in the front, and the sonar actually goes out and spreads out this way and forward. So diesel submarines will actually come about, half a mile, quarter a mile right below that ship bow in that ship displacement, and they'll float right under there. So airborne ISR capabilities, ASW capabilities cannot detect it. And they will just sit right under there. And then when they're ready for a strike, they'll just pop up behind you and you're done. And that's what we had almost every single time. You cannot know that they're there because your sensoring devices really won't pick them up. So that's just kind of a perspective that I have when we start talking about submarines and naval warfare and what's happening potentially in the Caribbean and why they keep on sending more U.S. assets out there for this. Now, do I believe it's Chinese or do I believe it's
hold on? I'm going to set you up for that conversation right now because this is where I wanted to go. 3 countries just met, and we talked about that meeting and how interesting it was. Yeah, China and Russia and the United States. And do you remember when that was, Josh?
Well, we actually had indirect meetings with the U.S., Russia, and China. This was last week. You had Wyckoff and Kushner meeting with Vladimir Putin in Russia at the same time. Lavrov and other foreign ministers from Russia were meeting with Li Zhuang, the second premier of China, which is kind of a very powerful person in China. And they were talking about the defense cooperation agreements. Now, a lot of people were saying on the mainstream media that this was a show of force from China. There was a reason why China was meeting at the same time that U.S. representatives were meeting with Putin. And this was the show, hey, we're in with Russia, not you. I don't believe this for 1 minute. I think that this was more of a indirect meeting between all 3.
Let me present a hypothetical scenario to you, and then game theory this with me. We know that all these countries have their own respective deep states. We know China has its deep state. The United States has its deep state. Russia's dealing with its deep state. And I think we're seeing us come to the precipice where, this sovereign alliance is everybody taking on the deep state, this deep state apparatus. And we see this large deployment of the U.S. military in the Caribbean, off the coast of Venezuela and in that AO. Imagine a scenario, especially because, thinking of some of the videos and posts that the boards have put out there. Imagine a scenario where the deep state was in possession of a old diesel Russian submarine.
I got you.
Yeah, I see. I knew you were going to pick up where I was going here, and I'm going to hand it over to you because I know you'll make this make sense. And this Russian submarine, diesel submarine that South America had, the deep state has this. And this is their big red button. This is their Trump. If you come after us, if you arrest us, if you do this, we're going to fire a missile from this thing. We're going to fire a nuke. Now, whether it hits America or whether it's intercepted doesn't really matter. Because even if you intercept it, when this ship's destroyed, it's going to surface as a Russian ship. And everybody's going to be like, oh my gosh, here we are, the Cuban Missile Crisis again. Russia tried to hit us.
Well, okay, hold on. Yes. So a few different things. Number one is people are like, this is crazy. That could never happen. June 10th, 2018, Trump was leaving the G6 from Canada, was supposed to go west to fly to Singapore to meet with Kim Jong-un. Instead, flew north, ended up going to Rota, Spain, refueling, and then went over. They never announced the change in direction of Air Force One. You had what's known as the Whidbey Island incident that happened off the coast of Washington. You had what appears to be a missile rising up from the ocean and going out over into the sky. The mainstream media said that this was a helicopter and a low frame rate camera. Watched these missiles launch from submarines before. This was absolutely a missile. But what you get from it, from the boards, when you watch into the Q boards and stuff like this, is basically this was a rogue submarine that was decommissioned in 2001 on Ketron Island in Washington, and a defense contractor that the deep state took into their own possession. They had missiles on board, nukes on board, so forth. They were out there operating, and their objective was to create an EMP above Air Force One to knock it out of the sky over the ocean, and then create something that said some accident happened. Air Force One went down, and Trump was dead. This was in 2018. There was a counter to that whole operation because that operation ultimately failed because Trump's plane went the opposite way. 2 months to the date, on August 10th, 2018, at Seattle Tacoma Airport, SeaTac Airport, a Q400 aircraft, Dash 8 aircraft, was hijacked by a gentleman that was a baggage handler at the airport, not a pilot. Hijacks it, flies it over Washington State flies it, does a circle and a Q around Ketron Island, and flies it into Ketron Island. On the boards, immediately you find that we took out the submarine base, all this stuff. Whether that's true or not, I believe it was. I believe it was an op. The reason being is because the submarine that was pinpointed in that June 10th scenario was known as the Richard B. Russell, which, by the way, if you know Schlittmeicher's Illuminati bloodlines, the 13 Illuminati bloodlines, one of those bloodlines is the Russell family. And yes, Admiral Richard B. Russell was a member of that family, which I find just really interesting. But the Richard B. Russell was a submarine decommissioned at Ketron Island in 2001. And what we have is the hijacker's name of the Q-400 aircraft, which I don't believe he died. I think it was remotely flown, was Richard B. Russell. And this was all coordinated on the boards. Now, so it's been done before. Now, going into the scenario of what Alpha is talking about. I've said this on the show before. I'm not under an NDA, so I can talk about these things. I do contract in the real world. I do work in tech. I work in AI and blockchain. I do work with some companies. One of the companies does have a DHS and a DOD contract. In and around July timeframe, I was brought in on a call with the DOD and the Department of Homeland Security on a cyber event that occurred, a 0-day cyber event that occurred on July 7th. I don't know if I'm supposed to give those details out, but I am. You get nervous talking about these things, but okay. So anyways, what happened is that many of our systems, and we heard about this through the Microsoft Azure network, was compromised. This was their cloud network. Well, it went actually beyond the Microsoft Azure network. It was all of our gateway servers that basically bring in authentication. And to give you an idea, what was happening is every time that they cleared these PCs, these servers, and then rebooted a new operating system on them, completely wiped them, brought a new operating system on them, reloaded new crypto into them so that people could access with their CAC cards into classified databases, the system would automatically hijack, lock everybody out, and start sending classified information to foreign countries, China. Also, it affected our nuclear arsenal. This is the same time that Trump sent some of our nuclear weapons to foreign countries, Europe specifically. In this time, from what we gather, from what I heard on maybe a call, is that there was an initiation of a nuclear launch. This thing hacked our systems and started to initiate a nuclear launch. So I immediately understood that this was an artificial intelligence that was operating in a hack. And this was our deal. This is this last year. It was immediately shut down. Everything went to air gapped. So everything became air gapped. RIMPAC. Thank you, JTAC. RIMPAC. Nobody's correcting me. It was a RIMPAC. I've been out of the military for a long time. But they diverted everything back to kind of old Soviet, Cold War era technology, went to air gapping the whole system. They fixed it. They eventually got that whole system fixed. This was just a few months ago, guys. That was a nuclear threat to our country. And the whole objective, what they were trying to do, is they wanted to launch a nuclear missile to China from the United States of America to engage nuclear war. I've said it from the get-go. These people will never give up power, that they will scorch this earth before they ever do. And the same scenario actually is present today. What Alpha's saying is that, let's say that they have a Soviet era, diesel submarine sitting with one ICBM nuclear warhead that's 800 miles off the coast of the United States of America. It launches, it is most likely 80% chance that it will hit its target. And when that subsurfaces, or when that nuclear detection has occurred, they're going to see that it's a Russian ICBM, and then full-scale nuclear war will break out at that point in time. Hence why we have a massive U.S. Navy fleet in the Caribbean. This is the hard truths about the reality of the world right now.
And this is why I present it to you, because you got to look at these things through multiple lenses, because we don't know what's going to happen. So you have to game theory all these out, which brings us back to this Chinese vessel that landed on the islands that very eccentric, funny woman was talking about. And the first time I heard this news, I immediately thought, is this vessel actually concealing some type of armaments? Now, we know that that'd be in violation of the Geneva Convention and all these things. But at that point, if we're looking at World War III and nuclear, does anybody even give a shit about the rules and the laws of war? But then I started thinking about this scenario that me and Josh we have talked about offline. And I said, if it's the Chinese deep state that's in control of this sub, then would that mean that a Chinese intelligence vessel would be best positioned to find it?
Potentially, yes. I don't think that they have sonar outfits, so it'd be really hard, or ASW capabilities. But also on that same point, China could easily outfit one single ICBM launcher on board that medical ship.
I'm not talking in terms of our standard like sonar. Is I would imagine even with the diesel sub, there has to be a form of communication that this rogue sub would have with its wherever its hub is located. And if we rewind the clock back a little over a year or so, we know that China came out with a new quantum chip. And it was a material that the chip itself is new, but there's a material we use silicon. And the issue with the silicon is it's how much heat that it generates. And you can correct me on this verbiage, Josh, which is why you need these really cold areas to process them or to use them. Well, China has this technology, which is believed to be stolen from one of our SAP programs. And it uses this chemical that's not silicon, and it doesn't get the chip hot. And it's very, very, very much smaller, which allows them to create these smaller chips that are faster and don't require as much space and don't require as much cooling. And so if that, and this is pure speculation, if that type of technology was being used in their communications, the only ones that would have the ability to detect that communications would be China.
So yes and no. There's another country that has that capability. That's us. And
I was
so
hoping you would say that. I hope so.
when I was in the U.S. Navy, I worked with a guy that he was coming up to his 20 years by the time I got in. So this is 2003. So he came in the 1980s, and he worked on a classified program in the 1980s called SOSUS. This is the Sound Surveillance System. Now, if people don't know, U.S. Navy submarines and U.S. Navy ships throughout the 1970s and 1980s laid massive, long acoustic paneling all throughout the ocean floor. And from this, they could detect anything that was going over those panels. And they did it all throughout the Caribbean, just to keep in mind. If you go back to Lieutenant General Stephen Quast and the things that he's talked about, specifically on the Sean Ryan podcast, he talks about quantum sensing devices and how in practice, we already have satellites right now with quantum sensing capabilities. What does that mean? His example is you could hear an ant fart. Well, in this example, you could watch the natural rhythms of the ocean. And if there's a displacement 5 miles under that ocean of a nuclear submarine, you'd be able to detect that at that level with that type of satellite. So my thoughts are that we probably, if there is one there, we already know where it is. We've been tracking it. We have it. And we are just waiting for them to make a move.
So this is the map that I was talking about that Kaidi had posted 4 days ago. I'll bring it up so everybody can see it. And this is pick 1, and it says first pick subsea cable map.
Submarine cable map.
Well, she put subsea cable map. So I don't know. I'll
Well, it's listed right on the map.
Oh, there you go. That's number 1. And for you guys, I don't know if you can see it, the different shades, but you have the United States over here, South America over here, you have Africa, and then Europe. Map number 2 shows the subsea cables with landing stations in Venezuela. And then the last map shows one direct route into the U.S., touches Florida and New Jersey. And so hopefully you guys can see this right here. But out here, you got into Venezuela, then you got over here into Cuba, and then you got to New Jersey, or Florida, just above Cuba. And then you have New Jersey up here, and then you have the direct one all the way to New Jersey. And so and I'll go back to the first one, as you were describing that, it would make me wonder if that technology you're talking about wasn't utilized in these cable maps. Because you got to remember, everything's about using something else that's pre-existing as camouflage.
Right.
So,
yeah, my thoughts are that the U.S. military right now is beyond on point. They are over the frigging target, people. And if there's one executive branch that is running at full optimization levels, it's the U.S. military. I think that Hegseth and Kane are doing one hell of a job. And I feel safer at night knowing that those two men are running the Pentagon and the DOD. I really do. Because they understand these threats. They understand what we're talking about here. And these threats are always present. Don't get me wrong. But these guys would not sleep well at night knowing that there's a rogue diesel submarine hovering in the Caribbean with nuclear warheads. But if you have a massive presence like you do right now, that is a clear indicator that, sending the Ike out there last week is a clear indicator that we most likely have the situation well under control if there is something like that. And we even talked about it. I mean, there was a one video evidence that came out a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, I think it was in October, where the U.S. Navy actually posted the video of them blowing up one of the submarines, one of the drug-running submarines. And who's to say that was a drug-running submarine? Right? I mean, that was back in, I think, October, November timeframe. But there is a big threat. And I want people to understand that the people that are behind all of this, they don't give a shit about life. They have underground bunkers that they'll gladly go live in for the next 80 years to ensure that they live and don't go to jail for the rest of their lives. That their power and control is all that matters. And they will scorch this earth before they ever blink an eye. You got to remember, if you go look at the 16-year plan, the whole plan was elimination of 85% of the U.S. population anyway, or 85% of the global population anyway, with a great reset that occurs immediately after. And their whole objective is to create massive amounts of chaos and then control the outflow of that chaos into structured framework that allows them to stay in power and control. And that's what they're really good at. Order out of chaos, orders novus seclorum, right? So Venezuela, going to be very, very interesting what happens there. When I hear about Machado, I know Patrick Byrne was talking about Maria Machado. When I hear about Machado, all I think about are NGOs, CIA, and Chevron. One big part of all this big puzzle, people, is resources. Understand that right now, there's a massive resource war going on between the United States and China. I'm going to read one headline for you real quick. This was number one. Political came out and declared Donald Trump the most powerful person in Europe. In Europe, okay? So did you know that, where is it? There it is. The U.S. has purchased the entire production of rare earth mines in Brazil until 2030, covering what was already agreed to by the EU. What do I mean by that? The EU Commissioner of Industry just put out this quote. Last month, I was supposed to go to Brazil to discuss rare earth mines, minerals. 3 days before, we were told that the Americans had already come, put money on the table, and bought all production out till 2030. In other words, Donald Trump is undermining the European Union on various rare earth minerals and metals and energy. Think about Donald Trump talking about Greenland. Why does he want to go Greenland? Everybody's like, oh, it's a military base. You know, he wants a military. We already got a military outfit there. It's all about the resources that are locked underneath the ice in Greenland and within the Arctic. Okay. Why does he want Canada to become the 51st state? The massive amount of natural resources locked up in northern Canada, including oil and gas, is tremendous. In the United States alone, you have an estimated $124 trillion of natural resources that was unlocked by the Big Beautiful Bill. You just had the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda come to a peace treaty agreement. Do you want to know the price that they had to pay for that to President Trump? Signing over their mineral rights to allow U.S. commercial corporations to come in and take those mineral rights out of their ground. That's been signed. We now see that Donald Trump is turning on Zelensky. He basically threw it in Europe's hands and said, hey, Europe, if you want war, with Russia, you go ahead and have war with Russia. The new national security strategy is unaligning with Europe, moving away from Europe. It tells them in 2027, Europe better have their shit together because we're leaving NATO. That's from the national security strategy, okay? Now you have Russia, and so this is kind of an interesting take on it. Russia's primary source of funding for the Ukraine conflict is China's buying oil underneath Russian sanctions. Number two is China is going into Europe, and they are financially supporting Europe throughout a lot of the war effort. In other words, China is supporting both sides of the Ukraine conflict. So who has the best interest to keep the Ukraine conflict going? Well, that's China. Number two is Europe is the one promulgating that. Europe wants destabilize Ukraine because war with Russia is good. If they can take Russia out, that aligns Russia with China. And you got to see this in context that if China was your golden child, your capital city of your new world order, how you want the government, military, and economies to function in your new world order, then you have to have China rise up as a hyper super power beyond anything that any country has ever achieved. When you start to look at kinetic conflict between China and the United States of America, NATO is obsolete. If the United States and China went to war today, NATO does nothing. That is a dust off of your fucking arm. It is worthless. The only ally that matters in that conflict is Russia. And if Russia aligns with China, that's very bad for the United States of America. Not saying we would lose, but it's very bad for the United States of America. If Russia aligns with the U.S., this is where it gets really interesting. If Russia aligns with the U.S. and allies with the U.S. against China, if that war broke out, China doesn't fire a single shot because they know they already lost. And that's the key to understand global homogeny, is that right now there's a resource war. The resource war is to build the new infrastructure of everything that is coming about in technology. You have the Trump administration just released a Genesis mission where 30,000 scientists are going to be given access to the most powerful AIs on the planet to innovate technology for the next 10 years of the future. The resources are to build the infrastructure for that with AI, blockchain. We have a new parallel economic system that is rising up. We have the Supreme Court case that is being heard right now about the fourth branch of government. If the Supreme Court sides with Trump, he's able to fire the Fed Reserve chairman. He's able to fire the Fed Reserve boards of governor. He's able to fire the inspector generals. He's able to fire any independent agency that has typically been outside of his control. That means the elimination of the deep state. That means elimination of the central banks here in the United States of America. So I want people to begin seeing things from this global perspective.
What about the boss at the IRS? Could he fire that guy?
Oh yeah. So
just saying, because he dropped the nod that way.
Yeah. Well, so now when you go into this idea that Europe has a grand interest in making sure that Trump does not succeed, I think that that's really important. So when I start talking about, well, how do you get a connection between, Europe and Machado or Europe and Venezuela? Well, that actually comes about if you understand the Russia hoax or the FISA gate and the stolen elections. You have a gentleman by the name of Lord Mark Malloch Brown. Lord Mark Malloch Brown was one of the senior executives at the Open Society Foundation under George Soros from 2015 to 2020 until 2020 when he took over the Open Society Foundations. At the same time that he sat on the board of directors there, he was CEO of Smartmatic, a Venezuelan-owned company. Mark Malloch Brown is deep connections to the Rothschilds in the London banking cartel. So Lord Mark Malloch Brown is this kind of intermediary between the Rothschild money dynasties, the Open Society networks, and George Soros. George Soros is the public figurehead for the Rothschilds doing their dirty work in the real world through dark money channels, right through other associations, Arabella Advisors, NGOs, these types of things. And this brings about that whole money apparatus of the deep state of the global cabal. And so that money flows into Venezuela through a lot of those channels. Now, Machado, she is directly associated with Chevron. She's been the Chevron spokesperson. And Chevron has been trying to get into Venezuela and control their oil for a long time. They do have agreements with Venezuela where they take some of their oil. But Machado actually wants to go in there and privatize oil, taking that resource away from the people and then giving it to commercialization. Chevron is one who is set to benefit most from that. We know that Machado took money directly from the National Endowment of Democracy, which is nothing more than a CIA money front for funneling in color revolutions back in the early 2000s to actually start her counter opposition to Chavez. You have direct connections between Machado and the European Union and the MI6. She was a Bush surrogate put into place by Bush. So everybody calling for her to go into place. I'm like, fuck that. I don't want that woman. Let's have a free and fair election in Venezuela once you remove all the voting system cheats and let them pick who they want to pick as that president, right? So I have a problem with Machado there, but geopolitically, putting that to the side, there is a struggle right now globally for power and control of natural resources, and this plays a big one. Now, and going back to Ukraine real quick. So Donald Trump just said recently, what did he say? Zelensky hasn't even read the treaty that they sent over weeks ago, right? Then he comes out today and says, oh, yeah, Zelensky should absolutely have elections. And then Zelensky comes out today and says, yeah, I think we'll have an election. He's listening to Trump, but he didn't read the treaty. Now, why didn't he read the treaty? Because Macron and Keimer and Merz told him not to, that we're gonna give you $1 billion a month to fund your war effort, which they're under negotiations with Trump to buy that directly from the military-industrial complex in the United States of America. But they're giving $1 billion a month from the EU directly to Ukraine. Now, Zelensky comes out yesterday and says, we're not giving up land and territory. Well, that was part of the original negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine was all good with that. So that was part of it. But EU came in and said, no, that's not going to happen. But this is what I want you to understand. In this negotiation of treaty, if Zelensky accepts the deal, and this is what Trump's telling him, accept the deal, they'll give up territory in the Donbass, but Russia, Ukraine, and the United States will split 3 ways all of the resources that are extracted from that area. Here's the key. Trump has already greenlit Putin. He says, it's yours. We know Putin is going to move towards Odessa, take over the river, and split Ukraine down. If he does that, once that war ends, after basically they reach Odessa, because that's as far as Putin's going to go and they can hold that territory, once it ends, the negotiated deals between the U.S. and Russia, where the U.S. and Russia split those minerals. So, it's like right now, this is the best deal that Zelensky has. So I want people to see that. A lot of this is about power positions. And if you go into the national security strategy that just came out, this was mind-blowing. The first time in almost, 80 years that the U.S. has realigned its whole global position, moving away from empire building, bases throughout the Middle East, and getting involved in foreign conflicts that don't involve the United States of America, and said, we're only going to focus on the Western Hemisphere. And immediately after this, what did we see? Southcom AOR and Northcom merged into Western Hemisphere Command under the United States Army, which is huge.
On D5.
Yep, on D5.
I'm just saying, you kept telling us to look for that D5. And there it was in those big headlines. That's a lot, man. And
I know that's like a 15-minute rant.
It's information that's necessary, and it's because it explains other conversations that are happening outside of the topic we're talking about here. What do you mean this is related to what's going on with Candace Owens? That's just social media drama. It's not. And we won't sidetrack on that because we got to get to this video. So, we'll end up running the show out with this video with Alex Jones and General Flynn. So we can kind of talk about that. But just understand this irregular warfare that's happening is because one of for those of you that watch my show, what I've been saying, probably frustrating everybody because I'm on repeat with it, is morale is a what? Morale is a weapon.
That's right.
And what you're seeing right now is an attack on the morale of the American people. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these psyops for these psyops, because they're trying to sow division, but not just trying to sow division. We see a direct attack on the U.S. military the way Obama did on the U.S. law enforcement. The exact same playbook that Obama deployed on law enforcement, which took less than 8 years to turn the public opinion to not trust law enforcement and to hate law enforcement. You're seeing that same rhetoric that's unfolding right now with the U.S. military. It started with the seditious 6 that we talked about, and today we might have even added a seditious 7th one with the comment that was made. And I'll be talking about that on my show following DefCon. But I want to set all this up because you painted this perfect picture and map of the way it looks right now between America and South America, and it's specifically the AO surrounding the Caribbean. And we have General Flynn that has come out. We know, we said, before he came out and publicly said it, he's advising. He told us that he's advising some very important people, Pete Hegseth and Tulsi
he just briefed the president 3 months ago on the 2020 election stuff and on this general that came out.
And so now it looks like he's ready to transition from an informal advisor position to something that's a little bit more formal. So with that, I'm going to play our last ad, Josh.
Sure.
And then when we come back from this, we are going to play the Alex Jones General Flynn video, and we're going to be stopping it at different points to talk about it. So with that, you're going to love this stuff. Everybody should have it if you don't already. They say confidence starts with a smooth skin. And baby, Soft Disclosure Lotion delivers.
I swear by this stuff. Like, I kid you guys not. This is the first lotion I've ever had in my entire life that, like, I don't get ashy after I put it on any part of my body. Like, my hands are always dry, and my hands have not gotten ashy without, like, rinsing them through water and washing them with soap since I started putting Soft Disclosure on. Like, it is Black Man approved. I kid you not.
Black Man approved. You heard him. And let's be real. If it can handle his hands, it can handle anything.
Feet are like, they get so dry, like the heels of them, it'll just kind of like flake off. Like, but with Soft Disclosure, once you put it on, like it starts to absorb it.
Yeah, he went there. Don't worry, we won't show you his feet, but trust us, they're smoother too. Soft Disclosure Lotion is made with aloe, goat's milk, honey, and our exclusive oil blend that actually restores your skin barrier. Visit softdisclosure.com, use code BADLANDS, and get 15% off.
Soft Disclosure.
We're not going to show you Cam's feet. So with that, let me bring this up on
like Washington.
And rewind it just a little bit.
Don't mind the angry bald-headed guy. Remember, it's just information. If you don't like him, you don't like him. That's fine. But just understand, it's information.
Yeah.
Use that information for your own discernment.
Let me know when you want to pause it. And I'll be sure to hit pause. And if there's something I want to pause on, I'll do the same, Josh. So just let me know.
Sure.
Trump is like Washington and Lincoln, but in their day, they clearly understood which side their line was, where the enemy was on the, on the other side of it, right? They knew the British, and then of course the North versus the South. In our day and age, Trump is facing, this unelected bureaucracy we call the deep state, and now they are clearly aligned with this axis of resistance inside of our country, which includes, China rising in very, very, rapidly, this radical Islamist element within our country. And it seems to be permeating throughout our country's, cities, etc. So that's who he's facing. That is the adversary that you're facing, President Trump. It's not as clean as the North versus the South or the Patriots versus the British. That said, when you look at a place like Europe, Zelensky is a dictator. He's declared martial law. He's arrested journalists. He's shut down anybody that is in the opposition. Even in the Rada over there, if you're an opposition voice, you're arrested for treason. They
kill journalists.
Exactly. So the complex that exists here in this country is the exact same complex that exists over in Europe, and they want to perpetuate war, because if they don't have the boogeyman of Russia, then they can't have the machinery that goes with that. That goes with NATO, that goes with the European Union. It is a money-making machine. And Trump, as you know, sir, for you, Donald Trump. Well, I was going to say, for you, Donald Trump, you just spent $400 million in this big, beautiful bill. We just sent another $400 million that I understand. I just read about that this morning. I'm like, Jesus, we got 320 million people in this country. Give them all $1 million, Donald, instead of giving it to Zelensky, because that money's going to go nowhere except into the pockets of oligarchs and crooks, one of whom they just arrested his chief of staff, Yermak, I think is the guy's name. So we're dealing with a crooked regime, and elections is the least of what they need to be doing. We, the United States of America, we need to really seriously consider just pulling out of all of that and telling NATO and telling the European Union, NATO minus the United States, hey, look, You want this goddamn war? You got it. We're done. We are done because we have to focus on home.
The government here is.
Fast forward. Okay, so he said a lot right there, specifically about Ukraine and Russia and Zelensky. Yes, I think it's $300 million was just authorized through the National Defense Authorization Act to go to Ukraine directly from the U.S. government, as well as just a few days ago, the Taliban received another, $45 million directly from the U.S. government. And we have heard crickets from the DOD on this. And this type of shit is nonsense. It's got to stop. We got to stop funding foreign wars and foreign countries and foreign governments. That's not our place. And through the national security strategy that just came out, the national security strategy basically says that ends. That's over. So I'm curious of what they're going to do with this. Now, one thing that we'll notice before we get on with the interview is what's that image behind his head?
And that would be Washington on the boat crossing the Delaware, which we know he has used in a lot of things where he fires off comms, including that video he did. And it's an image that's split into 3 separate pictures.
Love it.
It's very interesting. And then I just want to remind everybody, one of the journalists, and I don't know if this is the one AJ was referencing. I think it was, but this was Gonzalo Lira, if you guys remember him. And he was on Spaces in the whole beginning of the Ukraine-Russia thing religiously. And he was out there in Ukraine. They arrested him a few times, cut him loose a few times. And then eventually we find out that he dies in custody out there in Ukraine. And I was trying to look it up to confirm it. He died January 12th, 2024 in Ukraine, but he's an American. He was born in Burbank, California. And so just that's, an American journalist that was killed out there in Ukraine. So anyways, with that, let me hit play and we'll continue on.
The voices like yours, and there are other influencers out there who got it a long time ago and have continued to beat this drum. So we need to keep doing this because it is working. We are being effective in getting the word out. Now, I will say, in fact, the last time I think it was on your show, I kind of laid out, the essence of the color revolution and the stages that we are in, the steps that are being taken against us to be able to continue to undermine, the presidency of Donald J. Trump. Trump is now starting to really understand the depth and the extended period of time that we have been that this revolution has been ongoing. Others have talked about a counter-revolution. I've labeled this as a form of the CCP's unrestricted warfare, which is essentially the conduct of a war without rules.
Now, I want to pause there. One of the things that our community has, did it a lot in the beginning and then started to move away from it because it always seemed to just never come to fruition. And that was dates and times. Now,
boats and hoes?
Boats and hoes.
Boats and hoes.
Dates
and times. Oh, dates and hot times.
Such a great movie. But I thought I've shared this recently on the last couple podcasts because now that General Flynn's put it out publicly, I don't mind. But probably a little over a year ago, Boone Cutler had shared a portion of the book that him and General Flynn are coming out with. If you guys are unaware, you have the first book that came out, which is 5th Generation Warfare, followed by the book on artificial intelligence, followed by the book, The Role of the Church. And so then he sent me a portion of what this new book's going to look like. And I remember when I got it, my heart sank because, and we've talked about this, Josh. When these other books have come out, when 5th Generation Warfare came out in the months immediately following that, that's the conversation that we all started having. And then all of a sudden, artificial intelligence book came out. And then all of a sudden, artificial intelligence was commercial, but it wasn't commercial at the rate and acceleration that it was immediately following the release of that book.
Right.
So then I was just like, oh, I'm starting to see a pattern here. And then we get a longer wait and we get The Role of the Church. And with that, we get Israel, Gaza, we get the Palestine, we get the Judaism, Christianity, we get Christian nationalism. All this stuff's in the headlines. And so I see these things and I'm just like, every time one of these books comes out, it foretells what the narrative is coming. So it's almost like General and Boone are preparing us and giving us the information that we need to be prepared for these things that are going to come our way. So that's my thought when I see this fourth book. And in this fourth book, it's the CCP.
Mm-hmm.
And without going into the details of it, because it's their book, it's not mine. But my immediate assessment of going through this book was, oh shit. Like, just to put it very frank, it was, oh shit.
Yeah, buckle up, Buttercup. So the new book that he's talking about, Flynn kind of mentioned this, is that it's about countering the unrestricted warfare played by China and how we need to do that and operate as that, as digital soldiers, as Americans, as soldiers in the military, commanders, and politicians.
100%. And so now, and he came out, and I want to say he went public with this. Was it about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago when we did the show with him, or maybe not even that long. So right around that window. So now when I look at this, and he says it's almost ready to be released. So now if you look at, they got to finish the book if it's not finished already, because it's got to get released. Once he releases it, the book's got to make its rounds into the sphere of influence. That's going to take what, 2 to 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, while people are digesting it, the book got to pick up traction. We got to do podcast shows with it. We got to bring a general on to talk about it. Everybody's going to be doing that. That takes a couple of weeks to a couple months. So you're looking at, and I think that this is a very fast pace. I think it would take longer, but if we looked at an accelerated rate, you're looking at something like that taking anywhere from probably 4 to 7 months just to get that knowledge out there. And so if we look at that, to me, that positions us, I'm thinking either right before midterms, but I'm actually thinking after midterms.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm thinking, and this is just, again, folks, this is speculation, is you look at how many people that just said they're not going to run for the House that are Republicans, and everybody panicked. And I think we talked about this on Q After Hours.
Well, but one thing about that, though, is that there's 34 members of Congress that are not running for re-election. The majority of them are in Republican strongholds and are Trump loyalists. Guess what? Most of them are running for state governor. There's a reason why they're running for state governor.
And Senate positions.
And Senate, yes. But most of them are running for state governor. And there's a reason why that is. We can get into that conversation later.
Well, yeah, and that reason leads into, I think, the timing of all of this book is, I think you're going to have America First MAGA people that are going to replace those Republicans in the House anyways. I think that's going to happen. I think that's why we see this war of gerrymandering going on, throughout the country in different states, because they all understand this. And Texas got a huge ass win with that. And I think that's all voting well for us. And I think the reason is because Trump is positioning ourselves, us as a country, that we are going to win the midterms, despite the people that are trying to tell you that it's not going to happen.
No matter what Polymarket says.
Despite what Polymarket says, we're going to win the midterms. Trump is going to put legitimate America First people in the role of governors. He's going to make sure that we are in control of not just, we have the numbers of the House and Senate, but we control the House and the Senate, where he doesn't have to capitulate to people like Lindsey Graham, because Lindsey Graham, for everybody that's like, why is he going? Is he supporting? Because Lindsey Graham could shut down the Senate if he wanted to. And that's what makes that piece of shit, have the leverage that he has right now. And I would tell you guys, I'm fired up too. Chad Caton could give you guys a detailed analysis of Ladybug Lindsey. And that man hates Ladybug Lindsey, and he understands the geopolitical strategy with him. But when you look at all that, I think all that positions us that once, because this would all be after midterms. That's why I'm saying after midterms, is you get the book released, we all get educated after midterms. And I truly think in either the last part of 2026 or the early part of 2027, we see the Sovereign Alliance taking on the deep states of China and all this. I think we see it all come to a head. I think that's how that unfolds, bro.
So I want to touch on this because it fits into what you're saying as well. One of the main reasons I think that Donald Trump is having, so by the way, if anybody, so we can pull this off real quick. We'll just talk about this. Pull that off real quick just so we can talk about this real quick, because it's just a segue. But one of the reasons why Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump are having this K-Fobby feud is because Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted to run for Senate or governor of Georgia, and Trump told her no. Now, I want people to realize that Trump is the gatekeeper for endorsements and elections. He told her no, and she got all pissy and mad, and now he's calling her low IQ. Now, why is that important? Because we're seeing 25 members that are going to be running for governor of their respective states. Donald Trump is only doing that because he knows that the elections will be safe and secure, that they will not be rigged, and that he can win them. Now, why does he want to get his loyalists in the governor spot? Think about this. I've talked about the sovereign wealth fund. I've talked about the strategic Bitcoin reserve. We've talked about Chinese land ownership or foreign country, foreign asset land ownership in the United States of America. We talked about repealing the 1913 Federal Reserve Act. But how do you do that? Number one is you need a supermajority in Congress and Senate. And number two, you need a constitutional convention, which we haven't had in well over 100 years. And when you control 2/3 majority of the states, now you start talking about a constitutional convention, because to get ratified for a new constitutional amendment, like a sovereign wealth fund, like amending the 20th Amendment where Donald Trump can run for a third term, where term limits get put in on Congress and Senate, and that none of them can hold office longer than 12 years, period. Done. That's it. I believe that that's going to be the new constitutional amendment. How they're going to modify it is that no elected official can stand in office, no matter what the office is, longer than 12 years, period. So if you're running for Senate, that's 4 years. And then you could do Senate up to 12 years, or if you go to Congress or you become president, your max is 12 years. I think that's what they're going to do with that. So I think that they're repealing of the 16th Amendment, the federal income tax. They need a constitutional convention in order to do what the Trump administration truly wants to do. And I think that this is what the positioning of the governors, get these people in the governorship, is going to give us 2/3 majority through the states. Going out there and more sponsoring the local elections for state assemblies. I think that that's going to be a big part of 2027 or 2026. I think that replacing all of these congressmen right now with America First candidates is going to be massively huge. I mean, as much as I hate Susie Wiles, she says that I'm going to get Donald Trump on the campaign trail for 2026. We're going to go out there. We're going to campaign for these people and get them in a position because it's so important. And so if you're thinking about running for Congress, now's a great time to start thinking about it, because you might have a good potential of getting in.
I agree with you. And don't forget the big win in Dallas County, paper ballot.
I don't know what Patrick Byrne is going to talk about. I appreciate the fact that Patrick's been out there very publicly, and I've said this in different places. And I know Patrick's book. I helped him with the movie that he put out. Patrick worked for the United States government for decades, and then he was asked to do corrupt things, and he basically said, "I'm not going to do that." And then he turned the tables on people inside the government. And maybe that's what Patrick is going to be talking to you about. I hope it's that and more. I mean, many of the things
I hope it's that and more. The general knows what that more is. And, I'm trying not to go nuts on the pause button. It's just, this is what I did for a living of 14 years. Is listen to what people say, how they say it. People establish a baseline when they have conversations, and when they operate outside that baseline, you cue in on those things. And anyways, let's just keep going. But I do love that.
I'm now concerned about, and one of the things that I'm concerned about, and this has to do with Venezuela. I'm really concerned that we might see, because there's competing camps that are trying to get Trump's ear on which direction we should take in Venezuela. Never mind, what we're learning about Russia and Ukraine and what's happening in Gaza. We can talk about that if you want. But what I'm concerned about, and I talked to a great friend of mine over the weekend we talked about the Gulf of Tonkin false flag that got us into the depths of the Vietnam.
Well, let him talk about it, because he talks about it a little bit more.
And so at a certain point in time, everything that's going on down in Venezuela, down in the Gulf of America now, we'll start to feel like we're being drawn into something that we don't necessarily want to be in. What we really want is what do I want? I want Maduro to be told, leave, get the hell out of Dodge, and then allow the Venezuelan people to bring in the basically the government that they voted for, in the likes of a couple of different people. And they, from everything I understand, they have a really good plan to be able to execute if Maduro's out of there. What we have to be, and this is really for President Trump and his team, but for the American people to understand, we have got to be careful that we don't get drawn into something and a false flag is created. False flags are this is something that our intelligence community, and particularly the CIA, has done a lot of over many, many years to draw us into wars that are unnecessary. We're in Eastern Europe, because it was unnecessary that it happened in 2014 during the Maidan Revolution. The CIA and the State Department were a big part of that under the Obama regime. The Biden regime, all they did was exacerbate the problem. We wouldn't have any of the death and the killing that's ongoing over there. We wouldn't be where we were had Donald J. Trump been able to stay in power during the stolen election of 2020. And so, that mess is still going on, but I'm really concerned about what's happening in our own neighborhood. What I don't want is I don't want the Chinese, I don't want the CCP to own beachfront property here in here in our hemisphere, right? Beachfront property in front of the United States of America, which is essentially what they do now. So and I know I'm kind of honing in on Venezuela in this case, but I'm using it as an example of these sort of revolutions and this arena of unrestricted warfare that we are involved in. Now, all that said, I have been saying for a long, long time, the infiltration of principally the CCP, and mainly the CCP, but there are also elements. You can go back to, you can go back 40 or 50 years, but
So Flynn was right there talking about, he goes, hey, I was talking to a friend of mine this last weekend about the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which is what brought us into Vietnam. People don't remember that. You had Johnson. Johnson comes out and says, we just had a U.S. Navy ship that was bombed in the Gulf of Tonkin, and they sent 50,000 Marines the next day. Come to find out, it never happened. It was a Class Alpha fire on board the ship, and they used that as a propaganda piece to basically bring out war. You mentioned Bay of Pigs earlier. Is this a new Bay of Pigs? It's funny because that was my notes from my show earlier. It's that I looked at this as Flynn hinting towards that we could see another Bay of Pigs where the CIA is trying to set up an establishment of who's going to replace Maduro, cartel links, so they can keep the money funnel going. We know Cuban intelligence and Cuban government just reached out to Trump 2 days ago to help get in the negotiations of all of this. And so I think that it's very critical at this point in time that we could actually see a false flag occur in the Gulf of America, Caribbean area, Venezuela area, be blamed on the United States, which draws us into kinetic conflict.
100% agree with you. And it almost seems like history is coming full circle with the scenario of John F. Kennedy.
That's right.
And, it seems like we've come full circle, and it makes me reevaluate. Why did Trump rename the Gulf of America Gulf of America? We immediately all went because it made sense, in Occam's razor. You can't drill if it's the Gulf of Mexico, but if it's now the Gulf of America, there's no treaties and laws that are written with that prevents them. So that makes sense. But when you think in the terms of irregular warfare and psychological warfare, Gulf of America gives ownership to Americans. And so if something happens there, mainstream media headlines aren't reading the U.S. is fighting in the Gulf of Mexico, because you're like, why are we fighting in someone else's waters, even though it's literally touches our shores?
Right.
We see this as something as there's war being waged in the Gulf of America. It hits different, and it affects that court of public opinion, which is huge. Why? Because morale is a weapon. So
100%, buddy. Spot on.
Infiltration into our government by Cuban elements, certainly by Venezuelan elements, but the Venezuelan elements are more tactical. They're, the trend of Aragua that we've learned about over the last, this past year. Those are elements that have been creeping into our society, not since Donald Trump came into office or even during the last 4 years. They've been coming into the United States of America for a couple of decades. And they operate tactically to run these different drug cartels that have been operating in the streets of America. The Cubans, however, working with the Russians initially and now the Chinese, they've been infiltrating inside of our government for a long, long time. And so when I say infiltrating inside of our government,
we're talking about Mayor Bass of L.A. is an admitted Cuban intelligence asset.
Oh, there's people in prison right now that were spying for the Cubans. They're in prison right now. They were closely tied to people inside of our government. So this infiltration is not just some Cuban that's sitting inside of the State Department or inside of the intel community. It's people who they recruit and then they get to work for them. And I'm not talking about, this many. I'm talking about lots. I'm talking about 10 times that or more, maybe 1,000 times that, because it's been going on for so long.
Roger Stone, is married to a Cuban lady and is deep in the Cuban community. He says like a third or more of Republican officials, including some in Congress that say they're conservative, are on the payroll for decades of the Cuban intelligence.
Yeah, it's very, very important to understand that. And so, how deep does that go? How high up in our administration, this current administration, never mind the left, how high up does it go? Does it go to the undersecretary level? Does it go to a secretary level? These are the kinds of things that our government has to be dealing with and looking at. And I know President Trump is smartening up to all of this. He understands all of this. What he is learning again as president the second time is how difficult it is to break through these cement walls. These aren't glass barriers. These are cement walls that are thick, and they got barbed wire inside of the cement. It's that hard to break through the Department of Justice, the U.S. intelligence community, particularly the CIA, and other elements in our government. I mean, even in the Department of War, there's subversives operating in there that have been.
And that's where I was going briefly. 100. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the admiral, they said Hegseth told the truth. They called, said we're clear to fire. He said do it. He went on to his next thing. He wasn't there. He didn't watch. They talked to the judge advocate generals. They said hit the boat again. That's standard procedure. Right. All of that was a lie. So it wasn't just a leak. It was classified fake leak to undermine the president and the Secretary of Defense. That's sabotage. That's treason. I saw Hegseth, who I think is a good guy overall, very smart in ways. Yeah. I saw him saying, whoever the Wall Street Journal sources or whoever the Washington Post sources are, Washington Post, suck. No, they don't suck. They lied on purpose. Part of the whole don't follow the illegal order narrative for the soft coup. So we need to find out who did that, and they need to be charged with serious crimes. Correct, General?
I mean, 100%. I mean, this is a period of an age. Even though they tried to physically assassinate Donald Trump, and he needs to be very careful. The director of the Secret Service, they need to protect that man. Like they should all the time. But what they do and what they're trying to do to Pete Hegseth, and frankly, they tried to do it to Tulsi before. Whenever there's bad news for them, and particularly the seditious six, what they try to do is they then try to assassinate by narrative. And this is a tactic of the left to assassinate by narrative. I mean,
it was a total lie. It was a total lie. Like Trump saying the KKK are fine people. He said they're horrible people. They just lie.
Right. So I mean, they will continue to lie. They will continue to target those of us whose voices matter. Those of us who are standing up and standing our ground. You're one of them. And your great audience that has continued to support you. And thank God that they have, because we need your voice. We need other voices that are out there. You're about to have one, I guess when Patrick comes in, maybe today or tomorrow. But I mean, we need to have these voices right now who understand the geopolitical environment that we are in, as well as the homeland security environment that we need. And right now, there's a balance that Donald J. Trump is trying to do. He's trying to balance everything that the American American national security needs to make sure that we stay on top of overseas, right? And trade and all the stuff and all the different wars that are going on, the reconstruction efforts.
But if he doesn't go after the deep state, it's not going to matter.
It will not matter one iota. That's the second part of this thing, is this homeland security environment. And I'm not talking about securing the borders or getting rid of all these illegals. I'm actually talking about basically getting in and revolutionizing our government. I mean, reforming our government, getting inside of the components of our government that actually are doing damage to his ability to be able to lead this country.
And he has the bully pulpit, as you said 2 weeks ago.
States.
As you said 2 weeks ago, he needs to address the nation. He's done it in little ways and through his surrogates. A week after you said that, I saw the surrogates go out. It was confirmed. They listened to you. They said this is true. They had a CIA briefing, literally telling the media this. So that's a huge breakthrough. But it's not a one-off. It's got to be the war drum of we have these criminal group inside that's generating all these attacks. It's the mothership firing all the torpedoes. You got to take it out. So I saw you on Bannon. Can you elaborate on this? I know Trump wanted you back. I know you could do a lot on the outside, but you said, no, I'm out of this. And even when I tried to get you to run for president when Trump wasn't sure he was, you said, no, I think we're going to draft Trump. But I saw you say, won't you elaborate, that you're ready to be brought back in. And I'm telling you, there's nobody as good as you, General. And I know you're like George Washington. You want to be at the farm. I know you're out in the country fighting the tyranny. But is it time for us to really pressure Trump? And where would he bring you in?
Well, in terms of going back into the government, number one, President Trump understands that I have remained loyal to him, but not loyal to a fault. He knows if I disagree with him, I'll let him know that, and I have. He's been very supportive, and he's working his tail off. I mean, the man is now he's going to go around, the country and basically rally until 2026 to make sure that we stay in the House. So he's got to do that. I mean, I am in different roles right now that I play, so to speak, on behalf of trying to continue to protect this country from being destroyed. And I want people to understand that this is not about the left and the right, the Democrat and Republican, conservatives and liberals. This is about a completely different ideological underpinning that the left wants in this country. And what is most concerning to me, and they call it the Red-Green Alliance, I call it the axis of resistance, is this coming together of communists and Islamists in this country, as that are not just showing up in mosques or showing up.
They sign up with the Democrats for every form of fraud.
Everything, and inside of our Congress right now. I mean, when they did a recent vote on making sure that we didn't allow socialism in our government. It was like 92 of them voted against it. Like that they voted for the idea that socialism was okay. So how many do we have? I used to say about 25%. Maybe it's more like 50%, and it's not just the Democrats. I actually think that there's probably some Republicans in name only when you start looking at voting records. So the bottom line here is whatever I end up doing, I'll continue to do what I'm doing, which I have a passion.
Oh, you're very effective right now. I just saw you say, I mean, we can play the clip. You're just like, well, yeah, okay. They asked me to serve, I will.
Yeah. I mean, if I serve anyway, if the president came and said, hey, Mike, I'd like to have you come back into the government in some capacity. How best do you think that you can help? And I have I have a large network of people around the world as well as right here in this country.
But what you have is the 360, 35,000 full spectrum thing. You need to be commanding the task forces to go after the deep state. Like we had Doge with Elon, they should bring him back. We need you in there as a national security roving czar to working with Ed Martin to go after the deep state.
Yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, I mean, I think I said on Steve Bannon the other day that, they would shit their pants if he brought me in as the czar to basically, get after the deep state. I looked at a video this morning, Alex, of me on Al Jazeera back in 2015 this morning.
Pause. So we can pull it down.
Yeah,
we only got a few minutes left, but so I wanted to. So number one is Flynn said a lot there, but he's laying out the whole framework of how all this works. He's trying to tell you that, hey, look, this isn't about the left-wing Democrats and the radical ideology that's happening there. This is radical Islam. This is Chinese intelligence. This is countries that hate us that came together and started collaborating together to take down the United States of America. There's a lot of them, and they've even infiltrated our government. He says undersecretaries, and then he says, who knows, maybe even the secretary level. Now, one of the things that Emerald has came out with and said that Marco Rubio is a Cuban spy. Now, that's a big allegation, but that's what he was hitting towards, that, hey, look, we should look at all these people. Now, I actually think that I like Marco Rubio since he's been Secretary of State. And I see him being a massive Trump loyalist. So I don't see that. But I could be wrong. Who knows? But when we start to look at everything that's going on.
It could have been people, maybe Marco Rubio was, and he got checked. You remember?
Yeah.
This goes into a story I shared a few weeks ago, with the CIA officer and the rookie CIA officer. And the whole point of the story was, if you remove one, it takes 20 years to find who the replacement is.
Mhm.
Or you can just monitor that one and always know where they're at and what they're doing. Maybe Marco Rubio was a spy, and maybe now he's under control.
So this is my thoughts and my prediction. They talked a lot about bringing Flynn back in and how he would run a task force to take down the deep state and in a national security advisory position. He is already in a national security advisory position. I know we had someone out there that's like, they're talking to real raw news stuff out there on YouTube, like comments like Flynn's 1,000 points of light and all this garbage nonsense that we've already debunked multiple different times. But what I want to say is that Flynn has already been working in a discrete advisory role. He just briefed President Trump 3 months ago. He's in contact with POTUS. Okay. And POTUS listened to what he just said that today. And so I think that the first thing that's going to happen is winning the Supreme Court case. And I think that this is actually the precedent that sets forth how to eliminate the deep state. And the reason I say that is because if you brought Mike Flynn in last week, 2 months ago, 6 months ago, President Trump didn't have the ability through executive power to remove a lot of the people that he needed to remove. The SIGI, the Inspector General's Council, none of these people. He can't remove any of them. If the Supreme Court gives President Trump the executive authority back to the president, we're about to see a massive move. And I think that's with this Supreme Court decision overturning Humphrey's executor, that we will see General Flynn coming back in soon after. Because if you have someone who knows where the bodies are buried, but you don't have the judicial power to go out there and prosecute the murderers, what's the point in bringing them in and letting the world know?
It's pointless.
It's pointless. But once you get that judicial power to go out there and prosecute them, now you bring him in and you find out where the bodies are buried. That's what we're waiting for. That's up next. That's what's going to happen with Flynn.
And I'm here for it. With that, folks, we got a Rumble rant from last week. I don't remember reading it, so I want to read it just in case we did miss it. This was from Q Fan Addict, DefCon 0 for December 2nd. $5 boost over there at badlandsmedia.tv. You can go search out boost on the tabs. Said, try 10 times to send a rant. Considering POTUS strong instruction to GOP governors, coupled with the fact all GOP states will submit their voting rolls, even if Ds do not cooperate. Remember, deep state never rigged Dems. Their targets are GOP precincts. And from that, we will transition over into
and just real quick before you do that, 20,000 people out there watching right now. We only have 1,800 thumbs up, guys. There's 20,000 of you watching. Come on, we can at least get 5,000, 10,000 thumbs up. Come on, everybody give this a thumbs up. Help get this on the leaderboard. I know we are featured on Rumble, but let's get it up there for a while. So give us some thumbs up, guys. Appreciate it.
Set a record. Smash that like. Let's do something that Rumble hasn't seen with a smaller platform before. So with that, let's go into Rumble rants and appreciate the people that support us. $5 from I am Nuke Mag. DefCon 0 us daddies. Jesus, bro. $5 from Peyton Pooh. So John, when you get Badlands rugs made, please put an arrow pointing to a corner saying, pull here.
I love it.
I wish I knew what that was about. That sounds
rug
like
pulls.
Oh,
because we were going to rug pull everybody tonight, remember?
$25 from Texas Jules. Josh needs a boomerang for his new digs. I got you, dude. Yes, he does need his Badlands boomerang. You got to hook him up. 100%. Those things are so freaking amazing. Dollar for dollar, Angie K. Trump praised Susie tonight at the rally, even called her Susie Trump. So stop trying to tear down the admin. Listen, you don't get emotional, Angie K or anybody else. It's not about tearing down the admin. It's about having honest reactions to honest moves. If he is doing things or not doing things, it's supposed to generate. Our job is not to react how we think they want us to react. Our job is to be honest and sincere about the reactions on the things we say, to be responsible about it, not subvert our president in the process. But sometimes they make these moves because, again, I'll say, he also said Hillary Clinton was a great lady.
Well, hold on. Even more recent. Beginning of this year, he said, I love Elon Musk. Elon Musk is amazing. Then he called him an asshole and a traitor. And he said earlier, about 6 months ago, Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of my favorite congresswomen. I absolutely love Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now he's calling her a low IQ individual.
Just saying.
Just
saying.
understand, people.
$10 from Listone69. Watch the podcast today by Joel Altman. He had on Trevor Kirk and his lawyer, who is also Patrick Byrne's lawyer. She said he's been through a lot. Alpha, you need to check out Trevor Kirk's story. I will. I know a little bit about it briefly, but I will definitely check it out. T Dooley 708, now monthly supporter. Thank you. Welcome to the Badlands family. Dollar for dollar, Susan DeBello sent Alpha an X-Mail YouTube segment, one pilling the tea to Nino on Grinnell and Ratcliffe, how both are compromised and Venezuela today. Sounds hot in the Caribbean today. It is. Listen, we got to make sure we don't emotionally attach ourselves to people. We have a president, and that's where my trust stays. Everybody else is expendable, and that's what allows me to move based off facts, not emotion. $5 from Valesco 16. As a person who pays attention, Patrick looks highly stressed. Alpha, you're someone who's integrated. Does Patrick look highly stressed or passionate or something else? Well, there's a lot to that because, you know, when you've talked to Patrick and you've talked to Patrick off the air, there's a thing that that's kind of what I had mentioned earlier tonight, baseline behavior. And it's when people operate outside the spectrum of what their base is that you cue in on those things. And Patrick's always wild. Like he's a very animated person. So, and again, to do a proper assessment, I would want to watch the full entire interview. So this way I could see, there's markers. And so I would say, just my initial assessment, it didn't look anything too suspect or stressed out to me out of the ordinary. However, that opinion could change if I saw, the full interview that he did. Next on deck, $5 from the new Prue. Help with understanding Trump's ongoing flattery of Wiles. Does she truly have the power, and where does it come from? I think we just nailed that one right on the conversation.
Yeah, she's a gatekeeper.
$20 from Rudog68. Good day, you handsome roosters. I live in Western Australia. An OTC dish used for the moon landing has just been put back into operation to track new fixed orbit sats. Also, my old Samsung phone enabled 6G. Well, shout out. What time is it over there? I'm curious. This freaking beautiful place. Lots of good places to party. We'll leave it there. $5 from Buster Duster's Cars. I work for a city now, but didn't work for the DOG contractor and for a major trucking company. And a plan for Southern California is to relieve Long Beach Harbor of their duty to disperse cargo and to now load it straight to rail, move it up to a high desert where they are making the new hub of the West. My thoughts are to remove China's control of the harbor. I'm not up to speed on that, Buster Duster Cars, but I do have a lot of friends and family in those areas, so I'll dig into that a little bit because you definitely got my curiosity going with that, because we saw the major issues when Newsom passed the emissions and the vehicles with the semi guys and the hours. It created a freaking catastrophe at the ports, especially with the unions. And then the last one, I think, another one came in. Rashid is now a monthly supporter. So welcome to the family. And then $5 from I'm a Man Nuke Mag. This is Mega Nuke. I know, but it's showing your old handle, so I'm calling you by your old handle, Mega Nuke. Thanks, daddies. You freaking A,
Awesome.
Over 20,000 people watching tonight, man. You guys are freaking.
Hit that thumbs up, guys. We appreciate it. Thank you for all the support out there. Everybody subscribed, everybody who gave the rant. You guys are amazing. Glad to be here on Rumble. Rumble's freaking amazing. And YouTube and X.
Yeah, grow us on these respective platforms, folks. We appreciate it. You know, and again, Badlands Media is what's brought so many of us together with different things and you know, things that we research, and with that we bring in a blended audience. And to see audience picking up on these new shows and these new things and the information you guys provide is just awesome. And just know that you guys are appreciated. So Josh, where can people find you? And then I'll let them know where they can find me, and then we'll get out of here because I got a show to do in a couple minutes.
All right, redpills.tv, redpills.tv. If you go there, there's ways to follow us on social media. You'll see 2 buttons at the bottom, ways to support us. On X at Real Joshua Reid. Reid is spelled R-E-I-D. Substack, redpillproject.substack.com. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, you guys can find me everything alphawarrior.tv. On Rumble, the Alpha Warrior Show, I'm going to be doing Candace Owens, the PSYOP. Probably be about an hour and a half show starting here on Rumble in about 10 minutes. So if you guys want to go join me, I'll go ahead and rate us over there. I'd appreciate it. If not, you guys can catch the replay if it's a little later for you guys. You got any cool videos or anything we can play on the way out, Josh?
We got a few of them in there. I mean, pick one.
Stand as One.
The Awakening one. Everybody loves that one, so you can just play that one.
All right, I'll play that one. You guys, again, leave comments, hit the likes, and I'll catch you guys on my show in a few minutes. God bless and simplify.
There was a time when our children stood tall, hand on their hearts, one voice for all. There was a time when honor had weight, when the flag was a symbol, not a debate. There was a time when our history was known, with pride in the rules that made us our own. There was a time, respect for the brave, for those who bled, for the lives they gave. Now the homeland burns in silent war. Truth is twisted, we can't ignore. Voice still calls, we the people will not fall. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil undone. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time when truth was clear, when the media served, not ruled by fear. There was a time when leaders stood fast, guarding the people, defending the past. Now corruption wears a crown, lies are fed to tear us down. But Q said watch, and Q said see. The silent war will set us free. From the front lines, soldiers stare, wondering if we're still there. Their blood, their hope, their sacrifice. rise. We are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on. Or we will spend our sunset years telling our children what it was once like in the United States where men were free.
There was a time is near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil undone. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time